Cinema Classics is sponsored by the Gateway Film Center and is produced by John DeSando and Johnny DiLoretto. Listen to shoot. Cinema Classics is sponsored by the Gateway Film Center and is produced by John DeSando and Johnny DiLoretto. Listen to full shows online at wcbe.org. I'm Johnny DiLoretto.
I'm John DeSando.
This is Cinema Classics.
It sure is.
So, is Hugh Jackman one for the ages?
Or is he aged?
Or is he aged?
You know, that's a great way of putting it. We were going to look at him and then a little bit about middle-aged actors, but that's a great question. I'm not sure he is. I don't see him as an actor of range. I see his stature. I see his iconic kind of blades of hands and so on.
Blades of hands.
Yes.
A.K.A. Wolverine.
Got it right.
His long stint as that.
Yeah. And I see that in the whatever that superhero canon is, I see him having a strong place there.
Yeah.
But among our great memorable actors, I don't see it.
It's so interesting because I at once completely agree with you, but in other ways I have to disagree.
Okay.
Few stars, and he is a star.
Yeah.
Few stars of his caliber are as... Here's the thing. It's a weird... He straddles this line of capability, like he's a capable actor, but you're right, his range is somewhat limited. In that range, I think he does fairly well. He acquits himself usually pretty nicely, if not always terribly memorably. On the other hand, he is exceedingly likable. Mm-hmm. There's something supremely charming about this guy who has specifically made his name and his mark on the industry as this gruff, ultra-violent superhero, and yet is a dancer, a musical performer. You know, this sort of outlying reputation he has as a Broadway musical theater star. It's a really fascinating balance.
I know it is.
So I do really enjoy watching Hugh Jackman work. It's just not always an enjoyable experience because of the movies he's in.
Yeah, and Reminiscence recently being the best example that we have so far of where it goes down.
I haven't seen this movie.
No,
and I can't muster up any good reason to see it.
You don't want to waste your time.
I've seen it. It's one of those movies that, you know, this doesn't always happen, but I saw the trailer and I felt the trailer was too long.
It's a hot mess. You know, as you're talking, I'm thinking to myself, well, you know, I will always remember Jimmy Cagney.
Yeah.
Who also could dance and sing.
And play tough guys.
But yet he's memorable. And I realize he's won the Oscar. So he's, you know, our boy hasn't yet won an Oscar.
Yeah.
So, but, and then I'm thinking of somebody else who's memorable, whose range is not terrific, Bogey.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so.
Right, it's like a, you know, like a very specific, like an athlete. You know, when you watch the Olympics, you see these athletes who are, there's so many Olympic sports where the skill set is drilled down to this very hyper-specific thing, this hyper-range, right? Like a pole vaulter.
Sure.
I guess that's what we're talking about, right? Actors who are pole vaulters, who are really great at this very specific thing.
Yes, and whose affection is won from us by being even more than charming.
Yeah.
Whatever that is, that screen presence.
So we've talked about this too recently, I think. Denzel Washington.
Good one.
Who's coming, he's on the tail end of middle-aged.
I know, and I've got him on my list. Okay. Very good.
He's at the tail end of middle-aged. But we have seen Denzel, we often consider, not just us, you know, he's considered one of the premier actors of his generation. And yet, he has done so few roles that really tax his range.
Yes.
You know, in the way like Daniel Day-Lewis can turn up as...
Yes, these are great examples. Yeah. And you're right. Has he given us yet the performance to be remembered forever?
And will he?
And well, will he?
Does he care enough?
No, he doesn't. Now, what about, how do you put in middle-aged Brad Pitt?
Yeah, see, I love this conversation because it seems like, you know, if we were having this conversation in the 70s or 80s even, we'd be talking about older guys. These guys would not be considered middle-aged, I don't think. They'd be, 50 back in 1984 was a lot different than 50 in 2021, right?
Yep.
So Brad Pitt, it's just funny to think of him, and even Leonardo DiCaprio as middle-aged guys.
Gosh, yeah, right. Yeah,
Here's the other thing you don't think of when we talk about middle-aged, but guys like The Rock and Jason Momoa, those guys are in their 40s, pushing 50. They're middle-aged.
Yeah. Well, how about Matt Damon?
Yes. And Ben Affleck.
Who just turned 50.
Yeah, middle-aged guys.
Yeah. So, does Damon have it for us to remember 20, 30 years from now?
You asked the wrong guy because I don't like Matt Damon very much.
How about Ben Affleck?
I don't like him very much. No. In the right roles, these guys are, again, just like Hugh Jackman. They get the job done. I don't necessarily remember, they're not the kind of actors like Jack Nicholson or De Niro where it gets in, it's going up.
Yeah.
They're not like actors like Nicholson or De Niro where you're going to remember, where they're going to sear through the narrative that's happening on screen and forever mark your brain with, are you talking to me? Or,
I agree with you.
Here's Johnny. That's just never going to happen with those guys.
I'm looking at my list and it doesn't have one guy that qualifies. Let me see here. Well, there are two that we're going to be discussing recently. One would be Michael Keaton, as to whether he stands up as a middle-aged guy.
Yeah.
And Nicolas Cage is the other one. Otherwise, the rest of them are just really...
Well, I think both of those guys you just named, we'll always remember. I mean, Michael Keaton, and I'm really looking forward to a conversation about him next week. But Michael Keaton has carved out a very interesting career with a lot of valleys. Maybe more valleys than peaks, but a couple of the peaks are historic.
Well, and you're right. There, as I'm looking at my list, I don't see... Well, Denzel does. Anybody else who has an Oscar, and
in this,
in my list,
Pitt, he just won the Oscar.
Yeah, you're right. Okay,
Denzel
very
won
good.
the
Thank
Oscar.
you. Yeah.
What about Clooney?
I did.
It's a very male-centric conversation.
Well, we started with Hugh Jackman.
Yeah, right.
So I was.
We are focusing on the men.
We are focusing on the men.
Okay.
And in fact, implied in this is the fact that women are on the ascendant.
Yes.
I think we were.
And historically speaking, so few great parts for middle-aged women.
Yeah.
I just recently rewatched Thelma and Louise, by the way.
Oh.
And maybe one of the great middle-aged performances of all time is Susan Sarandon in that film.
Yes, she is, and groundbreaking in a movie for the feminist movement. That's a really good choice.
Anyway, we'll have to talk about.
I know. Yeah. Well,
the distaff version, as you might say.
Yeah, we would. Let's. Yeah, what do we got here?
We got about 3 minutes.
Okay.
12, or we can.
Yeah, we can
wrap this up, right? Okay.
Right. So let's wrap this up.
Okay.
So middle-aged men. What do we know?
Well, what we know is, given the lifespans of the American male, they had a lot of movies left in them.
Right. So we started with Hugh Jackman, we went downhill.
Quickly.